We're back looking at the Zenith Datasystems 286 desktop. Last time we got this machine up and running, give it all a bit of a clean. It was rather dusty inside. If you haven't seen part 1, maybe go take a quick look at that first. This time though, we're going to get a few upgrades in there. We've got a network card, 4 megabytes of RAM, and a sound card in the shape of a Covox Soundmaster Plus. But we also have a bit of housekeeping that needs taking care of. As you can see, I've powered the machine on here, but it's forgotten its CMOS settings. That's because we still don't have a battery in there. So need to get that sorted. And in the comments of the last video, someone suggested that Sony floppy drive, well, it might have surface mount capacitors that have most likely leaked, or if not will shortly start leaking. So let's get them swapped out too. So I didn't show this in the last video, but I do still have the battery pack that originally came out of this machine. 6 volt, that's quite high, isn't it, for an internal battery? I would normally expect them just to be 3 volt. So this is going to take a bit of thought. I'm going to have to get some sort of battery carrier for a 6 volt battery that will fit in this space. Because this original battery holder, well, it lived in there on that bit of Velcro, and it would certainly be nice to put the new battery back in there also. So I'll need to order something for that. But if this floppy drive does have surface mounted caps, well, in all likelihood, I'll need to order those as well. So let's pull it out and take a look. So I've just taken the screws out of the logic board. Let's have a look. Nope, they're not surface mount, they're through hole. There's one there, and there's one up in there. Suppose we could still change them, but to be honest with you, I think I'll just leave them. It's only really the surface mount caps of this era that will give problems. The drive itself is working fine. I think I'm happy enough to leave the through-hole capacitors that are in there. So all I need to order then is some sort of 6 volt battery. But while we're waiting for that to arrive, I'm going to crack on and get the rest of the upgrades in here. Starting with the memory, 4 meg in total on 4 sticks. And while there are 4 free 32-pin SIM slots on this board, I'm actually going to remove the existing RAM and just replace it altogether with the new. And my reasoning for that, to be honest, is that I have another job in mind in which I want to use these 256k sticks. Plus 4 megabytes of memory total. That is loads for a 286. Our network card then, ReadyLink eNet16 Combo-VP revision B1. Fairly sure this is NE2000 compatible. Just hope it works. I'm going to stick that into the bottom slot. And our sound card, the Covox Soundmaster Plus, quite possibly the least supported sound card in history, because this little thing, while being an Adlib clone, does have its own DAC. However, there is only one game that actually fully supports the features of this card. Certainly an interesting little thing. I haven't tested this either. I hope it works. And we're going to stick that in the top. Oh, my made in the USA sticker just fell off. It's meant to be there. We'll have to stick that back on later. I'll put these away, then we'll power it up. Okay, let's get this set up. So we're going to get our error message. Of course we are. Still no battery in there. But we can drop into the BIOS. Let's set up that memory. So with 4 megabyte total in there, 640k of base, that leaves us 3456 for extended. I just wonder if that is going to work, because if you remember last time, with 1 megabyte in there, we could only get the 640k of base to register. I thought the remaining 384k was maybe getting used by some sort of BIOS shadowing option. Although, as you can see here, there's nothing to select that. Hard disk drive is type 16, as we discovered last time. Right, let's save that. Restart. And check it out. Extended memory size error. So there is that 384k of memory. It is being used by something. The only thing I can think is BIOS shadow, possibly video ROM shadowing as well. Regardless though, 640k of base and 3 megabytes of extended there. That is still absolutely loads for a 286. I've wrote the NE2000 packet driver onto this, along with a few files from the MTCP package, so that we could set up an FTP and copy stuff onto the hard drive. Best thing I ever did was to install that LS120 drive in my Windows 10 machine. While I can't read the LS120 disks, it does let me read and write 720k and 1.44 meg disks. Just a lot handier for transferring stuff to and from these old machines. So we run NE2000, and as you can see there, we need to specify the interrupt number, which is 0x60. We can also specify the interrupt address and the IO address, but you don't have to. And that didn't work. Generally, if that doesn't work with your card, it'll be the settings. But as you can maybe see, there are very little jumpers on this. It's just that jumper block there. That one there is just for an external LED. So back on stassen.org, I think I have found our network card here. ENET16-Combo VP. That gives us a brand of compacts there, but I think that's the same. Certainly looks very similar. That jumper block is in a slightly different location though. Put it like this, it's the closest one I can find. And at the minute I have that jumper block, which is J4 on my card, set to position B. So B is closed, A is open. That would suggest an address of 260 and an IRQ of 7. Let's try that. So NE2000 0x60 7 0x260. And that has crashed the computer. It doesn't work. No matter what I do, it doesn't work. Either the packet driver is wrong, or there's a fault on that. But no joke, I've been at it for about 3 hours. It doesn't work. Let's use this one instead. Another ReadyLink ENIC16 combo. I know this card works because I just had to pull it out of the 486 build. But as you can see, this card is a lot more configurable than this one is. A lot more jumpers on that. So very possible that what I actually need here is some sort of utility to configure that. There may be some other options that we can adjust beyond just changing that one jumper block. And I know this card is set up for interrupt 11. That looks a lot better. we now have our Ethernet address, our MAC address. And I already have that card set up for my router. So all I need to do is set mtcp-cfg equals sample.cfg. Then we can run DHCP. Looking good. Then I can start my FTP server. And what I want to do is back up a full copy of the hard drive of this machine across to my main Windows 10 rig. Then we can start having to play with some new software on this. Well, it's now the next day and I've made a few changes to the software that's on this machine. Originally, this thing was running DOS version 4.01. And I'm going to be really honest with you, I was having nothing but trouble trying to get the memory sorted out. Games kept running out of memory, kept giving me error messages. I've never really used DOS 4.01 before, but after a bit of quick Googling, well, it transpires that's maybe not the best version of the operating system and isn't that great at its memory management. So what we've done is take that off, and I've just installed DOS 6.22. That gives us a nice total of 580k to play with, plus our extended XMS memory. So let's run some software. I want to start with a couple of benchmarks, in particular LM60, because I'm keen to see exactly just how fast our little 286 processor is actually running. Because if you remember to last time, in part 1, I guessed it was running at 16 megahertz. So let's find out. And what do you know? While this computer might perform like a 16 megahertz AT, the clock is actually 12. So just taking a closer look at our daughter card, there is the 12 megahertz AMD 286 processor. There are two crystals down here. This one is 24, this one is 32. Now, given that the chipset has 16 megahertz printed on it there, I made the assumption last time that the clock was being based off this U206, the 32 megahertz crystal. But given that LM60 just reported a clock of 12, well, that's making me think that our clock is being derived from here, U205. But this is interesting. Co-processor speed, so the 287 that would live there, we can adjust that by changing this jumper block. Currently set to 2.3, so it's taking its frequency from U205, the 24 megahertz, dividing it by 3. So if we did have a chip in there, that would be running at 8. But if we move that into there, setting that jumper to position 1, 2, that sets the coprocessor speed to 1/3 of U206, as in the 32, which is what, 10 point something. But I'm wondering if doing that will also change the clock speed of the processor. I'm wondering, will our processor clock now be derived from this crystal rather than this one? Certainly worth a try. Let's see what happens. So is the machine going to post? Yep, seems as if it will. Let's boot back into LM60 and see what our clock speed is. Well, no, it's still 12 megahertz. Unfortunately, not that simple, is it? Oh well, it was worth a try anyway, wasn't it? I dare say the only way we could actually overclock this system, or try to anyway, would be to swap that crystal out. Change it from 24 megahertz to a 32. That would try and get us 16 up here. There are various other crystals on the motherboard. 4 there, there's one hiding in there, and there's one behind the riser card, but none of those run at a frequency that you can easily derive the 12 megahertz of the CPU from. So it has to be that 24 megahertz crystal on the daughter card itself that is driving the processor. One thing I could actually do, instead of swapping it out, would be to just remove it and then run a little jumper wire from the output leg of the 32 megahertz crystal to where the output leg of the 24 one was. But job for another day. System's running, let's just leave well enough alone. I want to check out this sound card. Now, as I said before, our Covox Soundmaster Plus, well, this is really just an Adlib clone, but it does have its own DAC, so its own feature set, but unfortunately only one game supports it, and that is Alone in the Dark. Now, typically for an Adlib card there would be no drivers to install. Any game would just address it directly. I dare say that this thing works in a very similar way and we won't actually need drivers, but the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed I do have the original program disc. And unfortunately, the very eagle-eyed among you might be able to spot that this disc is absolutely covered in mold. I don't think this disc will read. In fact, I know this disc doesn't read. I have tried it in one of my other 5¼ inch drives. What I mean is, I don't think we could clean this disc and get it readable. Plus, it's not like we can fit it into our 3½ inch drive in here anyway. Or can we? Because if I just neatly fold it in half, there we go. It fits perfectly. Now, I know you think I am some sort of monster for just doing that. And in fact, I can almost hear the clacking of those mechanical keyboard warriors. But no, fear not. This is just an old 5¼ inch disc that was well and truly wrecked. Absolutely nothing special about this. It was just a blank disc, and you might be able to see several scores in the surface of the media. The surface of these discs has just failed. This was scrap anyway. The original one is fine. And despite the fact that it does have damage on it, I would never do something like that to an original program disc. I'll hold on to this. I may have a go at cleaning it to see if I can get it readable. It is quite severe, the mold on here, but you never know. Or if anyone happens to have a copy of this disc and could maybe get in touch with me, I would be very keen to know what is on it. But let's just power up the system because I want to know what our Covox sounds like. And with all the messing around the daughter card, our flaky connection has give up again. What I actually find with this is that you need to push it right home and then pull it up just a fraction. And the machine starts. So I have a few games in here to try. And let's start with something that we all know, Monkey Island. This game supports Adlib sounds, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So monkey space A. Well, it sounds like Monkey Island to me. It sounds like the Adlib version of Monkey Island to me. The jack on the back of this card, by the way, is mono. So what you're listening to here, I've just taken the single channel mono and doubled that up over both left and right channels. But at least that shows that our Covox works and it sounds really good. You know, I'm so used to running this game on the Amiga that I often forget just how good the VGA version of it looks. Just because you've got the higher colour depth of the 256 colour VGA, it looks amazing. Not that there's anything wrong with the Amiga version of it. I mean, that's where I played this game in my youth. So what else have we got? Shall we just jump into Alone in the Dark? And to launch this game, you run that tatou.com. So we can jump into the configuration. And you can see for the music card there, we have options for the Adlib or our Soundmaster Plus. And then for sound effects, well, we can also pick that Soundmaster Plus. Let's go. Now I dare say this game is looking for a considerably faster 286 than what we have here. Its minimum spec is 286 for the disk version, which is what we're running. But there are 286 systems up to 20 MHz. So what we have here is probably at the low end of it. But you can hear the digital sound effects working there. Those are playing through our Covox, obviously. There was no option for Adlib for sound effects. And if I begin a new game, what I think we could do is listen to this back and forward between the Soundmaster Plus and the Adlib, just to see if there's any difference. Just want to hit pause for a second there because a little problem that I didn't notice until coming to edit is that when you're running the Soundmaster Plus with its digital sound effects enabled, it obviously must add a lot of CPU overhead or something like that because the game runs significantly slower. So you see this top video here and its associated audio track. Well, that's the intro recorded using the Covox in the Soundmaster Plus mode with the digital sound effects. All this is synchronized, by the way. Well, the start points are synchronized. The end point of this one here and this one, well, the middle one here, that's the Covox running in Adlib mode, and the bottom one is it running as Soundmaster Plus but without the digital sound effects. So you can see by about 1 minute and 43 into it there, these two screens are more or less in sync with each other. But the first one, where we have the digital sound effects, well, it is lagging behind quite a bit. It takes it to, what, about 2 minutes and 6 seconds to get to the same point. So approximately 23 seconds slower over that 2 minute span. So for the purpose of this comparison, I have no choice really but to disable the sound effects. It's just not possible to keep it in sync with those digital sound effects enabled. The game runs too slow. Well, there we are, when it's just the music on its own without those sound effects, which I have to admit do add a nice ambience to that intro. But just the music, can't really tell any difference other than I think when playing in the Soundmaster Plus mode, it's almost as if the playback is at a higher sample rate. It just sounds a bit crisper, a bit cleaner, more clear. Well, we're almost there. In fact, the last thing we need to sort out is this battery. Now, I have ordered two 3-volt AA sized batteries, and the intention was to use them with something like this. Then just make off a wee connector, stick it into the motherboard, and we have our 6-volt battery. But of course, they haven't arrived. So, just to get this finished off today, I have rigged this up instead. There's the original connector of the old battery pack. And in here, I have stuck two half AA 3.6 volt batteries. Those are slightly dead, and with a little diode in line there, the voltage is sitting just below 7. But hopefully, that'll be okay. That connects to the motherboard in there. And then I've stuck a little bit of Velcro on the back. And that'll sit nicely into the little recess where the batteries were originally. The only other thing I want to put in here then is the two original expansion slot covers. I just want to keep them with the case. So I'm just going to stick them in there. And a little bit of PVC tape. Will stop them dancing about inside the case, causing any problems. And that is pretty much it. So, our little Zenith Datasystems 286. I'm pretty pleased with how it's all turned out. We've got 4 megabytes of RAM in there now, even if 384K of that is missing. Not really sure what's going on with that, to be honest. But if I type mem in here at the DOS prompt, you can see 384K reserved. My best guess is still that it's some sort of shadowing of the BIOS and possibly the video BIOS as well. But as well as that, we have stuck a network card in there so I can get this machine on my network. Just like that. Only problem, of course, being I had to take that network card out of my 486 build. So I'm going to have to get another one for that. Or try to figure out why this one isn't working. And we've also got our sound card in there, the Covox Soundmaster Plus, which in itself does seem to be a bit of an oddball thing. Only has that one game that supports it, Alone in the Dark, that we took a listen to. Didn't really sound any different, did it? Other than maybe a bit clearer under the Covox in the Soundmaster Plus mode. Of course, it does add the digital sound effects as well, but with only one game supporting it, well, it's a bit of an oddity. I'm just happy to have it, and it's got a home inside our little system. But that is it for now. So hopefully you enjoyed the little build of this machine. If you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Why not hit subscribe if you haven't done so already? Still plenty more yet to come here on CRG, and I'll see you next time.